Okay, so we are on lesson number 6, which starts in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and goes into chapter 5. And I'll be honest with you, we're just going to go to where we stop tonight because it's a big lesson, and I don't know if we're going to get finished with it or not. You know, that's okay. If we don't make it, then all of a sudden this 12-week study becomes a 13-week study. Unless we don't get through with another lesson, then it becomes a 14-week study. But we've actually got quite a few things to discuss in all of these chapters. So, you know, I'm not going to. I've been trying to kind of rush to get things done. You know, get the lessons done each time. And tonight I'm not going to rush and push it because I don't think that we're going to get it all in. I mean, if we do, we do. But if we don't, that's fine too. But lesson number 6, which is page number 16, and starting in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Okay, so we're all good with this, right? And that is approaching the book of Ecclesiastes, where people are the center of our own universe, right? Okay? And everything that we do, everything that we see, everything that we want is there, okay? And this is the approach that Solomon went and tested to see if there was any gain, because when we think about making ourselves the center of our own universe, then we're thinking, what are we going to get out of it? And ultimately, there is going to be no gain, because when we die, it's all going to be taken away. And so this is what the book of Ecclesiastes is about. Now, we looked last week about God's role in it, and if we're here with our universe around us, then God is on the outside, and God is doing things for His own plans and purposes. And because God is doing things for His own plans and purposes, it sometimes gets in the way of what we want to do. And so when it gets in the way of what we want to do, it is a burden to us. It is a problem to us, even though we need to understand that what God does is perfect and beautiful in its own time. So that was pretty much last week's lesson, right? About how God, and when He is doing things in the affairs of mankind, it is perfect and beautiful in its own time. But because we are here trying to surround ourselves with our own lives, we don't understand it, because that it's perplexing, it's confusing, it's grievous, and so on and so forth, right? Okay. So that was God's dealings with man. Now, what we're doing when we hit this point forward is we're kind of taking a different approach with the book of Ecclesiastes. I mean, this is all the same, and that because there's no gain, then everything is meaningless, right? But now what he's doing is, instead of trying to prove that point, he's going on to just simply talk about the things that he's observed. As a matter of fact, when you read through the next couple of chapters, you're going to see that he says, I saw, I observed, I looked, I saw, things like that. And so he's really looking at this life right here and just kind of seeing some of the meaningless things about it. And as he's seeing meaningless things, we're going to talk about, let me see some of the things that we're going to talk about. Observations about oppression, observations about achievement, observations about loneliness, observations about rulers, observations about religious vows, observations about riches. And so as he's just looking at life and looking at all of these different things, he's looking at the futility of the situation, but at the same time, as he's looking and observing and passing on his wisdom to us, he's also going to be talking about some of the things that we can do to cope with it. Not always, but in all of these different categories that we're going to look, there's also several proverbs that go along with them. And these proverbs kind of offer up a little bit of a unique insight, I think, in life. Because, you know, some of these things that we're going to be talking about tonight and probably next week are some of the things that we deal with on living life under the sun. And it's kind of amazing that Solomon was 3,000 years ago, but we're going to be dealing with the same things today. Because really, if you think about it, I mean, what he says, that things really don't change on the earth. And so, to me, I kind of like this because it offers a little bit of a unique insight on what life is, but it also kind of offers up a little bit of wisdom of what we can do to cope with it. Okay? All right. So let's take a look at the very first observation there in chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Okay?
I've thought of this before. 1 through 3.
Have
It's
you?
crossed my mind a few times.
I'm sure it has.
Without reading this,
Okay.
before I even read this.
Well, do you want to read, let me see, where do we want to read down to? How about, you want to read first verse?
Yep. Some of the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comfort. Power was on the side of the oppressors, and they have no comfort.
Okay. And then the very first part of that is, again, I looked and I saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. Okay? And then he's looking.
Oh, I see that now.
Yeah, not a problem, but then he's seeing, you know, the fact that he's looking at the oppressed. Okay? And what's really sad about this is that he's looking at the oppressed and they don't have any comforter to help them, because the power is on the side of the oppressors. If the power isn't on the side of the oppressors, then obviously the oppressed will be the oppressed, right?
Right.
And so the power is always going to be on the side of the oppressors, and then it's going to be away from the oppressed. And so, you know, as the oppressed, there's, you know, it's kind of a very hopeless situation. And so because of that, notice, boy, this is vintage Solomon right here, right? Verse 2 and verse 3. I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. Yeah, good old Solomon. Good old Ecclesiastes. And then it even gets worse in verse number 3. But better than both is he who has not yet been, who has not seen evil that is done under the sun. I mean, wow. You talk about gloom and doom depressing. I mean, that is like the ultimate depressing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Just when we think, oh yeah, we're getting out of the meaningless, proving that life is meaningless, and we're done with the gloom and doom, all of a sudden we get hit with this one. But what he's talking about here is just simply this. You know, if this is all that there is, right? You know, and especially if we're looking at the fact of the oppressor is oppressing the other people, and there's no hope for them, they don't have any help, you know, it's just a hopeless situation. If that's the kind of situation it is, then, you know, since we're looking at this and this only, then the people who are dead are better off than living, and the people who are even better than that are the people who have never had to experience any of it. Right? Okay. You laugh, Paul.
Because I've thought about this quite a few times.
Okay. Well, let's just dive right into the questions. Okay. How common is it to see people oppressed today, and in what ways have you observed it? You guys have never seen anybody oppressed today?
It's very common. You have the Christians over there in Syria, in Africa, and the different countries are being oppressed. Egypt, you have people over here that are being oppressed. Christians in some places are being oppressed. In Haiti, when I was doing my work in Haiti, when I talked about oppressed people. Yeah. But you know, they were happy. They were happy as we are.
Well, they were happy because they weren't in this cycle right here.
But they had each other, they didn't have things to get in the way of that.
Yeah. Can you think about people being oppressed that is in a non-Christian persecuted setting?
In Russia, all people oppressed in Russia. They divided
except for the oppressors?
Right, very, very poor and very, very rich. And those poor, they don't have jobs, getting worse and worse with Putin every year. People desperate. This is oppression.
What, Olga, tell me, can you tell us a story about, you know, what it was like when you were a kid, when you were living over there?
Was communism. Right.
I know, but I mean, what about buying a loaf of bread? What about?
Was big we always never had, or we didn't have bread, or we didn't have sugar, and we always have lines and lines to buy simple something, lines and lines and lines, standing, me, I was, and everybody else, you know, yeah.
Standing in line.
Was
buying
very,
bread.
and very, you know, country was closed. Iron, you know, iron. We couldn't travel anywhere because we had propaganda. America is capitalists. They're very bad. Like Europe is bad, everybody bad, but we are good. We are only good country in the whole world, see?
Well, I heard that, you know, during that time when people from Russia would come to the United States, that they would look and they'd say, you know, they're like, this is a grocery store, you can buy all these things, you don't have a line.
Faint, even
And
faint.
it was, yeah, that was fake.
No, I mean faint. When they see this abundance, they're like, oh my goodness, lost their conscience even. From so, see the contrast.
Well, see, what I heard is that they would say, well, this is fake.
Some
This is
couldn't
just-
believe, right,
This is
right.
not real. This is just a put on.
But when I first time came to Schnucks and I saw, I didn't faint, but I saw all this, me like, oh my goodness, aisles and aisles groceries. And I was just walking and looking at everything. And Paul said, we can buy, let's put, and me like, everything was just wow to me. And famous bar, I remember, the big stores with clothes, you can go and try on and buy what you like, not green and black like you always have, the same and the same, but colorful and beautiful and like wow.
Well,
This was different.
you know, one thing kind of closer to our time, did you hear about the Chinese doctor that first discovered the coronavirus?
Yeah.
He's dead now.
Yeah, he's dead. And you know, Shan and I were talking this before Bible study, is he had just reached out on social media to some of his doctor friends and saying, hey, beware of this is something new, this reminds me of SARS, you know, and one of the doctors took a screenshot of it and put that on, well, he was using an app like WhatsApp or something, and then put that on social media, and then the authorities came and arrested him and hauled him off into prison. And because he was in prison, he couldn't get the hospital care he needed.
My dad thinks that it definitely was made in a lab because of the arrest and because someone can have it within 14 days before they even have symptoms.
Yeah, but I don't know about that. I mean, I think that it's just the idea about what we're going, you know, back to what we're saying as oppressors, is that, you know, the Chinese government do not like anything that paints the Chinese government in a bad light.
Right.
And so, you know, I've seen videos of Chinese authorities like dragging people, kicking and screaming, and throwing them into isolation.
And the police brutality is out of control over there
Yeah.
too.
And so, I mean, it's just, you know, and that's one thing, you know, and it just goes on and on and on. And, you know, even in this country, you know, we have, you know, different oppressors oppressing different people, you know. Maybe not necessarily in our circle, so to speak, but, you know, you go down to the inner city, you've got gangs, Judy, maybe you can talk more of this, of gang lords, gang people oppressing other people, intimidating other people. Prostitution, sex trade.
Sex,
Yeah.
what the name of it, like sex trafficking.
What I found from the gangs though mostly is, if you don't lie to them, and if you don't put things on them, then usually they don't oppress each other and they don't oppress you. The ones in St. Louis, there isn't the oppression that you're alluding to down there. It really isn't. You know, if I would pull a drug dealer were, because I know he's a drug dealer, I throw a bag of coke in the car and then say, oh, you're under arrest, I found this in your car, then I would have a problem with him, okay? But if I pull him over and I tell him, I'm not going to search your car and I don't, or I'm going to search your car and I don't find something, I don't arrest him, then I pull him over and I search his car and I do find something and I arrest him, they respect that, they really do. So I didn't have that impression from them like that.
Okay.
But honestly, when I would go to a new neighborhood, I would have oppression from the black people because they would be afraid of me because I was white until they got to know me.
Okay.
And a lot of times oppression is actually, I think, actually either a lack of respect or a fear. Sometimes people will oppress out of fear too.
Okay.
And once they get to know you, then that will stop. But that's not like country oppression. Tanya, when she first came over, my mother-in-law, I can remember from Russia. What was it? Was it that big Snooks?
Our daughter was married to a Russian for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
We went through Snooks. Eyes that big. It took us 2 hours to get out of that store. She wanted to see everything.
To see, yeah,
Oh
just to
yeah,
see.
oh yeah. They will
Like,
stand
oh my
in line to pick out something, and they'll stand in line to buy it, and they'll take it. They go shopping on their lunch hour because it's their time after they work. They want to go home and they want to cook, so they'll go shopping on their lunch hour to get that over with. The standing in line stuff, and then if something comes in like toothpaste, give me 15 of them. Check their money, 16 of them. And they'll come home with 16 because it may be 2 years before they see it again. You know, and they will, am I wrong?
We used to buy
Yeah.
many.
Yeah. And then you'll go for sausage, cream cheese, and cabbage are 3 of your staples there. And they may have cream cheese, or not cream cheese, sour cream.
Yes,
They may have the cabbage and the sour cream, but they may not have sausage. So you eat supper without the sausage. They may have the sausage and the cabbage, and they don't have the sour cream. They're out of stuff just constantly. It's no supply and demand. It's we want to make it, so we make it, and screw you if if we don't have what you want. But yeah, that's a whole different thing. The country depression.
Well,
Down there, a lot of times between drug dealers, there's oppression, and there's, fighting, of course, like that, and innocent people get caught. But it's a whole different animal. It really is.
Okay. Well, question number 2: where can the oppressed today place their hope, and do they have someone to comfort them? Because here, if you look at verse number 3, or verse number 1, that they have no comforter. So is that absolutely true across the board?
Nowadays, it's done.
Nowadays, then, doesn't matter. Do the oppressed have someone to comfort them?
Yeah. Each other. The oppressed to comfort the oppressed.
Okay. And is that it?
Real
Only
comfort comes from God.
Right.
Real comfort
Yeah,
comes
but
from
you
God.
said not to mention
Only
him
God.
yet, not until the last
Who
chapter.
else? Government.
Under the
Well,
sun.
I mean, again, we're putting, if we're saying, okay, God is going to comfort us, well, for God to comfort us, then we've got to put things in the right order.
Yeah.
And that is, God is the center of the universe, and we are orbiting around Him. And when we do that, then we can find comfort, because the comfort that we're going to find largely is not going to be based on this life. The comfort that we're going to find is based on a hope for the next life. Okay? We realize, hey, there isn't anything in this life. It's oppression, it's sin, it's wickedness. We have no hope that we can anchor ourselves onto in this life. And so we have our hope in the next life. Okay? And that's why I want to say, when you're talking about Christian oppression, I wanted to get off that because, when you talk about Christian oppression, well, you've got a way of really putting this into perspective. Because if you're a Christian and you're being oppressed, and you realize, I don't have any hope in this world, then where are you going to go to get your hope? God in the next world. And then that puts him back in the center.
What happens to those that don't have God?
Well, then they remain oppressed in this life, and then they really have trouble.
And that's all it is.
Yeah.
Just no future whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a very dark, miserable place. And if you think about it, what Solomon's saying here is that, you know, in that kind of situation, better is the person who has died and has gone on and doesn't have to face these things, but even better is somebody who's never even been born to face it. And as far as like, you know, we were talking about China, and there's a show on Netflix, I think it's on Netflix, called One Nation, One Child, or something like that. And it's a documentary talking about the Chinese policy of enforcing every family having one child, and the horrors that come along with it. I mean, you talk, I mean, you just watch a little bit of this documentary, it's just like, ugh. But, you know, you think about it, you know, the babies that were aborted or the babies that were killed after they were born, you know, they're in heaven with God. They are better off, even though it was such a horrible thing that would happen to them. Okay. Yeah.
I'm just going to say, it seems like there's a correlation with freedom. Anytime
Yes.
a person or an organization places authority over you and limits your freedom or takes away your freedom, they're oppressing. I mean, that's an automatic oppression. And it can be as simple as just losing your freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Not being able to say or think what you want to think. And under God, you know, with the new heart that you have and a new soul, new mind, you really have more freedom. You have freedom really to worship Him, and it's a different life. But, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and that's really what our founding fathers tried to do with the establishment of
Limited government.
liberty here, is that we are endowed by our Creator for the pursuit for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You see, those are endowed to us by our Creator. And, you know, they understood these rights that we have come from God. And it's really necessary for a government to recognize these rights because they come from God.
And we're unique as a country. We're
We
unique
are.
in the world with that as a foundation.
We are.
Well, Israel is very, very close to us.
Yeah, they are now.
Israel's the only country over in the Middle East where a Jew can be a Jew, a Christian can be a Christian, a Muslim can be a Muslim.
That's true. That is true. Okay, moving on to page number 17. Okay, so now we've gone from oppression, and we're going to get kind of back into oppression a little bit, but this is really talking about observations about achievement. If you take a look at verse number 4, you see what Solomon sees. He says in verse number 4, it says in verse number 4, and I saw that all labor and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbor. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Now, what's interesting about this word that is translated here as envy is that it also can be translated as jealousy,
Rivalry.
and it also can be translated as rivalry. It's not spelled right, but you get the point, right? It's spelled rivalry.
A-L-R-Y.
R-I-V-A-L-R-Y.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Rivalry. Okay?
You
And
correct.
so it's the idea that there's something that somebody's doing, and whatever they're doing it's creating some kind of a motivating factor in ourselves to go and do it, whether that is envy or whether it's jealousy or rivalry or whatever. It's just that somebody's doing something because somebody else is doing something, therefore we are going to go do it ourselves. Right? Okay? And he says that this is something that is, in verse number 4, it's meaningless. It's a chasing after the wind. You know, I love that expression, a chasing after the wind. It's like, you know, how productive is chasing after the wind?
It's not.
It's just, other than if you just want to have fun and knock yourself out doing it.
Exercise.
Exercise, yeah. You know, it's just, you know.
What if you got a sailboat?
You're not chasing the wind, you're
Catching
the wind
it.
is pushing, you're catching the wind. You're catching the
Oh,
wind.
okay, catching it. Got
Okay.
it.
So from there, in the next 2 verses, he's going to give us a couple of proverbs that have to deal with that, okay? And so in verse number 6, he says this, or excuse me, in verse number 5 it says, the fool folds his hands and ruins himself. Then verse 6 says, better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and a chasing after the wind. Now, do you guys know what a proverb is? A proverb is going to be a short, witty saying that's going to express a truth. Okay? And so, verse number 5 is just a saying that's expressing a truth. Verse number 6 is a saying that expresses a truth. Okay? And if you think about it, verse number 5 and verse number 6 put together right there are really kind of showing contrasts of these 2 different extremes, if you will. So if the principle in verse number 7 is just simply this, that you know, human rivalry, envy, jealousy, you know, people there is, you know, they're really jumping into it, is going to be something that's motivating people, it's getting people going, it's producing something, but it's really meaningless in its extent. You've got 2 different extremes of that. You know, on the one hand, you've got the extreme where it says in verse number 5, the fool folds his hands and ruins himself. So what do you think of when somebody folds their hands?
Just doing nothing, yeah? Just sitting, sleeping.
They're done with it.
Late.
What's that?
They're done with it.
Yeah, just,
I'm done with it.
you know, okay, that's folding your hands. So what happens when a fool folds his hands?
Ruin themselves.
Okay, in what way?
Not achieving anything.
Yeah, they don't do anything.
Don't
Kind
do
of
anything.
self-destructive.
You know, if you don't do anything in life, then what do you have in life?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay? That's the way it is. I mean, that is life. If you don't do anything, you won't have anything. Because life is about activity. And then if you look at verse number 6, we've got it on the other extremity of it. Okay? Better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil. Okay? So what is it better to have? Is it better to have 1 handful, in other words, you've got a quantity in your hand and you're happy with it, than if you double what you've got, but you have strife with it? Which is better? 1 handful with tranquility, right? You know, if you have 2 handfuls, even though you double what you've got, if you have strife with it, then what does it matter? It's just simply a chasing after the wind. Okay? So you see the 2 different, when you're talking about human achievement, there in verse number 4, verse 5 and 6 kind of gives the extremities of it, right? You know, and so if you're talking about human achievement is going to be handled by that motivating, you know, oh, well, he's doing that over there, then I've got to, oh, well, she's doing that over there, so I've got to, okay, well, all right, some people are going to look at that and say, well, I don't want to have any business of it, I'm going to fold my hands. Okay, well, what do you got there? Some people are going to say, well, if that's the case, then I'm going to have everything that I can do, right?
It seems like human nature.
It
He
is.
does that all the time. She sees her sister's doing something, she copies it.
It's not that. I mean, it's everybody.
I know.
You know, you can look at kids, you can look at adults, you can look at everything,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, everyone has it.
Okay, so question. Be honest, if you lived on a deserted island, would you still place the same value on human achievement as you do now?
think so.
In other words, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to achieve this,
I achieve some of those things.
No.
I mean, you can hunt and eat and relax, but
Yeah.
That's that's my mindset.
That's
you
to,
can
to live and eat, not to.
sustain.
Or to
but, you
survive.
know,
Yeah, to survive, that's the
Yeah,
word.
just to.
I mean, you're not gonna write a book
Simple.
without a typewriter or a paper or a pencil or.
I would
Well,
care less
let's
about
just
those
let's
kind
just
of
say this:
things.
if you lived on a deserted island that was fully stocked, and you didn't have to worry about survival as your only waking thought.
Oh, I gotta work on music, man.
Okay.
Listen.
All right. Would you work on it as hard as if you had somebody there to push you?
Nobody pushes it.
Okay. All right. Well, there's people that are internally motivated.
I am.
Yeah, it would be like you had everything, it'd be, if you're the only one there, guess what? I'm looking for some trees or something to make me a boat to get off of there. You know, I mean, I don't know
Okay.
exactly how that get,
If
you
it's
know, I'm
fully
trying
stocked,
to
you're
put in
going
like
for
what the Bible's saying,
Yeah.
and like, you know, the achievement, no. Achievement, I don't have to do nothing, I can just live off of what's there. But I don't wanna go nuts either, you know, it's like, I gotta do something, or why am I even living? So, you know, I'm looking for a way to get out of there.
Okay. All right.
And then it's, you know, whatever. Look,
That's going to be your
achievement
achievement. That's going to be your achievement. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, and of course 1 being the lowest, how much does envy govern the way that you live your life now? 1, 1, 2, 2.
I think it changes depending upon your age and where you are in life.
I
I
know.
was going to say, the one so far has been retirees.
Yeah, you noticed that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't the Bible say you're not supposed to envy?
Well, no, we're not-
That's what I'm trying to do.
That's what I'm saying as far as envy. We're not really talking about envy itself. We're talking about just simply looking and noticing what other people are doing, and then you're jumping in and doing it too, based on what you see of other people. It could be because of envy.
Or you have the
It
desire
could be
to
because
do it.
of rivalry. It could be because of just simply you see somebody doing it and you think, hey, I can do that too.
Well, he's happier than me.
He's happier than me. Or, you
Well,
know,
that's his own fault, you know? He
Keeping
should-
up with the Joneses. It's keeping up with the Joneses.
There you go, see
That's
that?
what it
See,
is.
well, it's keeping up with the Joneses, but I think it's more than that. It can just simply be if somebody is, let's say that somebody is learning Spanish, and you think, hey, you know what? I think I can learn a foreign. I've always wanted to learn French. I think I can learn French too.
Was there anything wrong with that? It just, you kind of took somebody's idea and said, I think, you know, I'm not envying because they know how to speak Spanish, you know, I think, you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Well,
what
that,
is it?
that's actually the follow-up to the question, and that is there a problem with this? Is there a problem with this scenario?
That's different from envy.
Yeah.
There's, yeah.
That doesn't seem like envy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Envy is more than just envy. It's all these other things.
Seems
But-
like it's just helpful.
How could you say that was even jealousy or rivalry? I don't understand.
Okay, here,
Being interested in something and
Yeah,
curious.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, to
Maybe you
me,
sparked an
well,
interest in
it's
someone
beyond,
else.
it's beyond, what I'm saying is beyond an interest, it's beyond a curious. It's looking at what somebody else is doing, and then what they're doing is sparking something in you to do something.
and
That's what I'm
sometimes
saying,
there's
that I
just
don't-
curiosity and interest.
I don't know that in and of itself is a bad thing,
Right.
Yeah.
but it can be a bad thing.
It's only how you look at it, then.
It
like,
depends on what your motive is.
if you're jealous of
If you're trying
somebody,
to compete with
you know?
somebody,
Okay?
competition is not.
It
I mean,
depends
it's
on
good
how
to
far
a
you
certain
take it.
level, but if it's controlling your life.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we're talking about here is competition. You know, as far
That
as
can be a
rivalry.
bad thing.
Yeah, because it can bring up
Could
anger.
be a bad.
You know, but I mean,
Anger can develop.
if you look at people who are involved in sports,
Well,
You know,
People are very
this is competition. This is, hey, they just, you know, ran, you know, 100-meter this fast. I got to train harder so I can do it. Okay, so you train harder so that you can beat them. And it's not even that I'm beating them. I am trying to. You see, there is something to say about, well, we're advancing, we're improving, but at the same time, that's where these two proverbs come into play, right? You know, if you don't do anything at all, you're not going to get anything. You're going to ruin yourself. But at the same time, if you go so far that you're consumed by it, then what have you got? You've got strife.
I think that's the word consumed. You know, I don't think we were talking about being consumed. It's like,
Right.
yeah.
You know, and I mean, talk about, you know, learning Spanish, learning French. Okay, well, maybe there is the motivation of, well, hey, if they can do it, I'm smarter than them. I can, you know, and then you really dive into it, and it just really consumes you, and you become, you know, kind of hateful and bitter by it. I mean, not you, but I mean, you know, a person.
You know, educators challenge people, don't they?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be kind of like, I'm going to challenge you to learn French?
Okay.
See, then that's not a bad word. That's like a positive word or something, huh?
It is, and I think that in life we've got to have a little bit of that challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
If we don't have that challenge there, we're not going to go anywhere. But at the same time, you know, as far as, you know, you think back to education in classroom, what happens when you got two kids that are too challenged? Well, of course, that doesn't happen very often, but Sharon, you're shaking your head like you've seen it before.
Yes. Well, you want to encourage, but on the other hand, yeah, there's a rivalry as well with that. But I think as
As long as
adults,
he didn't cough a finger, I was happy.
yeah.
Everybody knows he used to teach shop, right?
Right.
Okay.
As long as he didn't chop off a finger.
Oh, chop it off.
All right. Okay, we got it? Okay. Moving on then to the bottom. Okay. Observations about loneliness. Okay, so verse 7 and verse number 8 is where he observes things. And so verse number 7, see, this is, if you notice what he's doing, he just, he's just looking at all kinds of different things of life under the sun. Right? This is 3,000 years ago. But man, it really is the same is true today, isn't it? So in verse number 7 he says, again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. And so if you look here, you notice that we've got somebody that, on your page, number one, the man is alone, and he didn't have anyone to receive his inheritance. And so he's working, but at the same time he's thinking, there's nobody that's going to be receiving any of the benefits that I'm working for. Okay? And then number two is, there's no end to his work. And he can't find any satisfaction to it. I mean, it's just work and work and work and work and work and work and work. And he's, you know, okay, well, can I get to this point and quit? No, I can't. Can I get to this point and quit? No, I can't. You know, it's just over and over and over and over. And then number three is he begins to ask himself, why am I laboring if I'm not going to give it to an heir and I'm not going to enjoy it? Okay? Do you see why he says this is meaningless, a miserable business? I mean, this guy is just, he's caught, if you think about it, right? Okay. So we see that the following verses 9 through 12, we've got 3 different proverbs that deal with loneliness. In verse number 9, it says, 2 are better than 1 because they can have a good return for their work. I understand that sometimes it's better to work alone. You know, there's some jobs that you just don't need to have anybody else do. But if a lot of jobs, especially something that involves manual labor, how better is it to work with 2 people rather than 1 person? You know, when you're trying to build a wall down through there, Carl, how fun would it have been to have just 1 person
Let's just
working?
climb up and down the ladder with bricks. Once you get to the top.
Oh, I'm talking about that wall right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you
We had
know,
4 or
You
5.
still need a ladder though,
but it's always good to have 4 eyes rather than 2 eyes.
and 4 hands.
You know, as long as one of the 2 eyes lets the other 2 eyes be the boss.
That's true. That's true. But, you know, if you look at that proverb there, it's just simply that 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their work. You know, there's sometimes you can be more productive
Yeah.
and, you know, you can be better off with 2 more than 1. Notice that 2 is better than 1. Next verse, in verse number 10. If one falls down, his friend can help him up, but pity the man who falls and he has no one. Oh, wait, that's part of the verse number 9. Read it all together. Verse number 9. 2 are better than 1 because they can have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him, but pity the man who falls and no one can help him up. And so, you know, there's the idea about how they can have a better return for their work. Okay, verse number 11. Also, if 2 lie down together, they can keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And so, you know, you got to think about in times without heat and air, you know, under the stars. If 2 people will lie down together, you know, they can keep warm rather than apart. Okay? It's kind of like a fire. If you have 1 log burning on a fire, it's not going to burn. It may burn for a little bit, but it's not going to burn well. If you put 2 together, then they can use the energy that's coming off of each other to help the fire burn. Okay? The next one, verse number 12. Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. Okay? If 1 dog was attacking you, could you defend it off?
Oh yeah.
If 2 dogs were attacking
It'd be harder.
No.
you got
I could probably defend myself, but it'd still be harder.
I don't know.
How big the dog
Well, it depends on how big the dog is.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, of course, if it's a chihuahua, you just, you know, 2 feet,
No, I
2
mean-
steps. But
Even a pencil, I think I could take 2 pencils.
okay.
Unless they're running full force, I mean.
You're pretty brave because
Yeah, you
you wasn't coming after you.
I just have to brace for the pain.
Yes, sir.
Did you guys hear about the mountain lion in California
Oh
that
no.
attacked a small child on a trail
Oh no.
in a national park? Did you hear about that?
Uh-uh.
I
What?
think the boy, little Sammy, was three years old. My daughter knew
Is
him.
he okay?
And yeah, he's going to be okay. They're a Christian couple, and they had just joked about seeing a mountain lion before they went into that park. Believe it or not, they were just joking about it in the car. And then when he got to the park, they were walking on the trail.
His wife looked it up, remember, on what to do if you're.
Oh, yeah, that's
attacked by
right. She
a
looked it
mountain lion.
up just out of curiosity. What would you do if you were being attacked by a mountain lion?
Wow.
Well, make yourself as big as possible, put your hands up, and yell and scream and act crazy, and actually go towards it. And that's going to be your best chance of fending it off. Well, lo and behold, they got on the trail, and a mountain lion was stalking little Sammy, who was 3 years old, up in front of the parents. And just like that, the mountain lion grabbed him by the throat, drug him through the woods, and the dad immediately took his backpack and threw it at the mountain lion. And anyway, to make a long story short, they took little Sammy to the hospital, and the doctor says it's virtually a miracle that he wasn't killed. That the cougar, or the mountain lion, just missed piercing his jugular by a centimeter, 1 centimeter. Otherwise, he would have bled out and stuff. But they just praise God that he had bruises and scrapes from being drugged on the ground. But just an amazing thing. 10 staples.
Me too,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
little.
Anyway, I just
Wow,
brought that
3
up.
years old,
Yeah,
that's
that's
Kennedy's age.
Very.
Yeah.
Well, they're little enough that a mountain lion, that's easy.
They always
to
pick
play.
the weakest ones,
Yeah,
yeah.
they pick the
Mhm.
weakest.
Yeah, they do. Well, notice the last part of that proverb. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Okay? So if you take a cord, right? You know, it's doesn't have much strength. If you take 2 cords and wrap it around, it's got more strength. If you take 3 and braid them together, then you've got a lot of strength. 3 are going to be more stronger than if they were separate by themselves. Okay? And so you see how all these proverbs are talking about here is that, you know, it's good to have other people around, right? You know, if you're all alone, you're just there, then there's not really a whole lot to this life. But if you have others with you, then you're better off. Okay, questions down at the bottom. In our modern society of connectedness, we frequently are around human interaction, yet loneliness is a prevalent thing. Why do you think this is?
Because people are judgmental. Some people may feel like they are judged in a group of people, so they might want to stay by themselves.
Okay.
But
the irony of that is that there is more judgment, condemnation of people on social media than face-to-face. You know, face-to-face people won't be very critical, but behind your back,
they feel
more
more.
so.
They feel more
But
brave things online.
when you've got the business of you know, internet,
Right.
people are even more so.
Do you think loneliness going deeper since Solomon's times, and now it's even worse? Or it's, to me,
I don't know because I wasn't alive then.
because of the technology, what I was thinking. Now everybody like selfish, like I have my phone. Mary, I talked to Mary. She said, we wait for a teacher. Nobody talked to each other. We waited for 20 minutes. Everybody don't care.
Yeah.
And she said, I was sitting without phone, one person, and just looking at everybody. They hanging or sitting, none of them talking to each other. They don't care. I think it's too much selfishness, like me,
And
I
think-
can achieve, I want, like, I don't
And
know.
I think it's a lack of an ability to, you know, if you don't,
To communicate, yeah,
Right.
between what
if you don't,
we were
if you
talking.
don't establish good ways to communicate,
You don't know how.
you
We
don't really
don't
know how.
have to anymore. We can go home, go to the grocery store, get food, go home. We don't need anybody anymore. And with the phones, it can be a personal relationship without being personal, you
Right.
know, by going through that. I've seen whole families at restaurants,
Substitute.
sitting there, and the whole families like this, they're not
We
talking.
substitute the close friend or something to those many people which are not close
It's
to
a
us.
substitute. It's a substitute for
In the
for
society.
people.
Why you said no, we don't know how it was, but looks like when we were young was different.
Yes.
Because I remember people without any call come to the houses. It was common. We could drink tea, we can talk. Not anymore without
No,
call.
calling first.
You
yeah.
can't go. It's so not correct
Yeah.
to come to
Yeah.
somebody's house. Also, when like almost appointments you have to make with people, seriously.
No, you're right.
True. And we're
I
isolating
think it's getting
ourselves. We
worse.
are.
I don't know. By the end of the time. it's getting worse.
Next question. Let's read Proverbs 18:24. So Proverbs, you just the next book back.
You need to read it.
Sure.
A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother.
A man of many companions comes to ruin, but there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. So, First part of it is popularity all that is cracked up to be.
I don't know, I've never been popular.
And I think that that's one thing about social media is that, you know, you've got, it does give a false sense of grandeur, a false sense of popularity, a false sense of, you know, oh, I've got 200 and something friends on Facebook. You know, well, so what? I mean, I can't tell you, I'll be honest with you, I don't even know how many people I'm friends with on Facebook. But I can tell you, I don't know a whole lot of them. I really don't.
Followers.
I know bad guys got like 3,000 people.
Followers.
Or more.
Okay, I take that back. I don't have a lot of
You have a
people
cell
I'm friends
I
with on
have cell
Facebook.
phone, but I don't have Facebook.
So here's the last part of that. Who could this verse be ultimately applied to? That very last part of the verse. Very last part of the verse. Who could that be ultimately applied to? A friend that sticks closer than brother. Did you hear that?
No,
Jesus. There is a friend that sticks closer than brother. Jesus, because he said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. Right? Okay. All right, we are going to call it quits right there tonight, and we will get started with other observations on page number 18 next week. Okay? All right. Anybody got any last minute comments or questions before we wrap it up? Yes. Very much so. But you see, this I really like this. You know, I really enjoy just looking at that and thinking about the wisdom and perspective of it, and just thinking, you know what, this really is life.
and I like your studies, this one. I like, to me personally, it's easier for some reason than that book. Because I was reading, this is so clear, and small and clear. But because of my English.
All right, let's pray. Dear Lord in heaven, thank you for everything you've given us. Thank you for your blessings, and thank you for the time that we had together tonight. Lord, please help us to increase our wisdom and our understanding. Help us to always turn to you for our guiding principle in life. Lord, we thank you for promising that you'll never leave us or forsake us. And Lord, I ask that you be at the lost and help them to understand that with you they're never really truly alone, and that you're always there for them. And help us to realize that too. Lord, please forgive us of our sins, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right, thank you.